Sir Isaac Newton is recognized as one of the most outstanding scientific intellects of all time. His elucidation of the laws of motion and gravity has effectively created the modern world and what's known today as space travel. Though many do not know that what led him to this understanding was his secret study of the Hermetica, an ancient occult esoteric religion that originated in Egypt by the likes of the ancient Egyptian Greek god Hermes Trismegistus. In this presentation, we will uncover how this secret occult teaching of the Hermetica, alongside alchemy, led him to the theory of gravity, which in turn has led him to be labelled by his peers as the last of the magicians and the last of the Babylonians and Sumerians to build the invisible intellectual world with the same eyes who began to build our intellectual world less than 10,000 years ago. Isaac Newton was born on the 25th of December 1642 in Woolsthorpe, near Grantham in England. At a young age, he showed great interest in mechanism and delighted in making machines such as a mini-house powered windmill. He later won a scholarship to Trinity College, Cambridge in 1661, where he was merely an average student. He later returned to Woolsthorpe, and it was there he began to think about the theory of gravity. The popular story is that after an apple fell off the tree, it sparked the idea in his mind that whatever caused that apple to fall also governed the motions of the other planets and therefore the Earth. He later returned to Cambridge, where he became a professor of mathematics in 1669 at the age of 27, and 2 years later was elected a member of the prestigious Royal Society, a scientific institution that is still thriving today. The Royal Society describes itself as a fellowship of many of the world's most eminent scientists and is the oldest scientific academy in continuous existence. It continues to hold dominance on how the world looks at science and is a fellowship of some 1,600 of the world's most eminent scientists. It was once called the Invisible College of Natural Philosophers and operated as a secret society in its early beginnings. This society was founded by Robert Boyle and Robert Moray, well-known Freemasons, therefore connecting it to the secret society network. It was in 1684 Newton began his monumental achievement to date, the Principia. The Principia was itself revolutionary since it declared the natural philosophy was explicable and expressible in mathematical form. Astronomers such as Copernicus and Kepler had used mathematics and geometry, and Galileo had taken their application a step further. But to Newton, mathematics was the very heart of science. According to many, Isaac Newton's work on the Principia was the final proof of the Copernicus theory. Newton demonstrated that his theory of universal gravity accounted for Kepler's laws of planetary motion, which was in turn derived from Copernicus's heliocentric model. This set the seal for the heliocentric theory for many in the scientific community. The Principia became an immediate sensation. After it was published, Newton moved to London, where he became an overnight celebrity. He was knighted in 1705 by Queen Anne, the first scientist to be honoured in this way, and was elected President of the Royal Society in 1703, a position he retained until his death. He was a Member of Parliament for 2 short periods, and when he died in 1727, it was a cause of national mourning. After his death, his large catalogues of manuscripts written with his own hand was revealed. It also became an undeniable fact that his writings were alchemical in nature. Many believe alchemy to simply be the transition of base metals into gold, but it was actually man reaching for that forbidden knowledge in order for man to become an enlightened soul, to become as gods, as this other fellow alchemist describes it.
Newton wrote about alchemy more than science and math combined together. He believed that religion and science are inseparable. His main goal was to acquire the Philosopher's Stone, which he wrote its recipe in one of his writings. He was inspired by the chemist Robert Boyle, which also was an alchemist. Now these two great minds, Newton and Boyle, studying alchemy made me think that modern science should reconsider studying this type of science, which is called alchemy. Alchemy is the study of transmuting matter from a lower state to a more perfect state. But it's not just about matter. Alchemy is also about the spiritual type of the self. So it transmutes the metal spirit of the self to a golden spirit of the self. And that is what Newton was studying. That is what Newton was doing. And that is what Newton believed all of his inventions came from.
Most people have a very mistaken view of what alchemy is, based largely upon the caricatures of its enemies and the misunderstandings of the uninformed. In reality, alchemy was and is an advanced spiritual discipline, closely related to modern Wicca in its concepts and images. These concepts and images were presented in largely coded form so that they could be read by the unenlightened as relating to chemistry and physical operations, and by the enlightened as a system of spiritual wisdom. Thus, the true alchemist was not trying to turn ordinary lead into gold, though the casual observer might reasonably think so from how things were presented. Rather, they were striving to turn the lead of an ordinary and undeveloped consciousness into the gold of a fully realized and enlightened soul.
John Maynard Keynes, the leading 20th century economist and great collector of Newton's alchemical writings, who in paper read to the Royal Society in 1946, Newton was not the first of the Age of Reason. He was the last of the magicians. Interestingly enough, most of Newton's alchemical papers that were collected by John Keynes and others are now in Jerusalem in the Jewish National Library. They are written in secret, elaborate codes, and many of them have yet to be deciphered. In the past, alchemy was against the law and could even attract the death penalty, hence why some believe Newton hid under the garb of Christianity in order to avoid detection of his secret love for alchemy and the Hermetica.
Now, out of my own studies in secret societies, I know that back then in the 17th century there was a secret society called the Rosicrucianism, the Rosicrucians. They studied the same studies that Newton was studying, which made me think that Newton would have part of that secret society. They studied the Solomon's Temple. They studied Hermeticism, which believed the same as Newton said. This projection of heavens to earth, as above so below, comes from the Hermetic teachings, which Newton was studying, which also the Rosicrucians studied. He also studied the Kabbalah, which is a mystical Jewish study. Now, for those of you who do not know the Rosicrucians, the Rosicrucian is a mystery school. They teach many mystical religious studies like the Kabbalah, the Gnosticism, ancient Egyptian studies, Greek mythologies, and many other religious studies. And Newton studied the same exact studies as the Rosicrucians, which made me think that Newton might be having part of this Rosicrucian society, which was banned back then, because it had a lot of ideas outside of the mainstream Orthodox Christian religion, like the Trinity, let's say. They didn't believe in the Trinity. Even Newton did not believe in the Trinity of Jesus. Newton believed that Jesus is like any human being, and anybody can reach what the Christ reached by making the vessel, this body we have, as a temple, as the studies of Kabbalah say, and hiring its state, its alchemical state, through virtues and righteousness. That is what Newton believed. So he did not believe that Christ is divine and this kind of divinity is only connected to him. He believed anybody can reach what Jesus reached, which was rejected by the Orthodox religion, Orthodox Christian religion. And that is why he kept it as a secret. He didn't want to publicize this kind of information. It was found later on in his writings. And it's also connected to the Rosicrucianism, because Rosicrucians believe the same.
Of Isaac Newton, it is written, like many of the esoterics before and after him, Newton was a great believer in the earliest civilizations such as Egypt. He was in no doubt that the Greeks learned everything they knew from Egypt. Newton frequently cited Hermes Trismegistus in his alchemical and esoteric private writings and wrote a detailed commentary on the Emerald Tablet, a tablet that is believed to be handed down from Hermes Trismegistus. Betty Jo Teeter Dobbs comments on the extent of Newton's passion for Hermes, explaining that Newton's study of Hermes Trismegistus extended over a period of 20 years, possibly longer. In the book The Forbidden Universe by Lynn Picknett and Clive Price, the authors write, "It is now recognized that it was not an apple falling on his head, or less dramatically, simply plummeting to the ground in front of him which gave him his eureka moment, but delving into the pages of Hermetica, and it bestowed on him nothing less than the key to unlock the mysteries of nature. It is not simply a matter of Newton hitting on the physical laws of nature by drawing analogies with the Hermetic principles. He applied those principles to the physical systems. For example, the big resistance to his explanation of gravity was that many considered it to be too occult. His notion of gravity as a force that acts across space at a distance and does so in the way it does purely as consequence of the nature of the universe was drawn straight from the magical laws of sympathy and attraction as expounded in the Hermetica. Newton put it more succinctly, declaring, "Gravity is God." The law of gravity invokes principles relating to forces that act between the earth and heavenly bodies that feature in very different language, of course, in Asclepius. It is the same work that inspired Copernicus. In a discussion of the mysteries of ancient Egypt, he wrote, "It was the most ancient opinion that the planets revolved around the sun, that the earth as one of the planets described an annual course about the sun, while by diurnal motion it turned on its axis, and that the sun remained at rest." The author in the book The Forbidden Universe then continues to write, "Of course, the obvious source for his understanding of the Egyptians is once again Asclepius and other Hermetic texts. If he had never become privy to Hermetica philosophy, he would never have achieved his work, and the world would literally be much the poorer for it. It is universally acknowledged that if the Principia had never been written, our modern technological world would not exist. But without Hermetica, Newton would never have written the Principia." Emphatically, Newton did not make his great scientific discoveries despite his esoteric beliefs, but because of them. So we see that it was the occult teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, ancient Egyptian theology, that led Newton to discover the theory of gravity. Now this poses a great dilemma for Bible-believing Christians. If there is a force called gravity, produced by the sun, that holds the planets, including the earth, in motion around the sun, then that would make the Bible a lie. As according to biblical texts of the Bible, the earth is stationary and cannot be moved. When the early Protestants heard about this new heliocentric theory, John Calvin wrote, "We will see some who are so deranged, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possesses them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors in order to keep us in his fear. So it is with all who argue out of pure malice, and who happily make a show of their imprudence. When they are told that is hot, they will reply, no, it's plainly cold. When they are shown an object that it is black, they will say that it is white, or vice versa. Just like the man who said that snow is black, for although it is perceived and known by all to be white, yet he clearly wishes to contradict the fact. And so it is that they are madmen who will try to change the natural order, and even to dazzle eyes and benumb their senses." Alongside that, the Bible clearly warns against God's people in the Bible about going to Egypt to learn the secrets of the occult and the mystery religion. It is the reason why God called his people out of Egypt. Now, could alchemists and the old serpent the devil be right over the suggestion that God is trying to hide this knowledge because he wants to keep the knowledge to himself, as he does not want man to become like God? Or was God trying to protect his children from the deceptive lies of the serpent that he has handed down to his followers in order for them to doubt the very word of God and cause confusion? You will find the latter to be correct. The reason why God warns his children against following the ways of the Egyptians, the ways of the occult, is because it is a system founded on lies, and that also includes the theory of gravity, which we have already explained came direct from the Egyptian way of thinking. Though gravity is taught as a fact, it has never been proven. Note the following explanation as to the reason why objects rise and fall.
Gravity is an